Hello and welcome, everybody. It is International Podcast Day 2017. Continue to use hashtag International Podcast Day, joining that conversation and continue to celebrate the power of podcasting this day. Well, in this hour, we have the great Gary Leland. He is a podcast Hall of Fame inductee, and Gary was one of the first 100 podcasters on the planet. He is also a co-founder of Podcast Movement, which has quickly become the largest podcasting conference on the planet. In 2016, as I mentioned, Gary was inducted into the Academy of Podcasters Hall of Fame. In 2017, Gary moved into the world of home and garden TV with his two newest podcasts, the Fixer Upper podcast
Okay.
and the Hometown podcast. He'll be discussing about
Go over there and
monetizing
see it.
your podcast.
Okay.
All right, well, let me get started and introduce our sponsors of International Podcast Day. Blueberry is a full-service podcasting company, a turnkey solution that will allow a new or veteran podcaster to get set up and running within 15 minutes. Get started at blueberry.com. Studio 21 Podcast Cafe is a full-service cafe with two working podcasting and video casting studios. The grand opening happens today, September 30th, where they'll be broadcasting live throughout the day. Learn more and visit them at studio21podcast.cafe. The Messenger is a podcast documentary, is a journey through the modern world of podcasting, uncovering the magic behind why podcasters do what they do. Get your copy of The Messengers in iTunes and on Amazon by visiting themessengersdoc.com. Potable, looking for your next favorite podcast? Potable revolutionizes podcast discovery by providing podcast recommendations tailored to you. Start by going to play.potable.co. That's play.podable.co. And finally, thank you to the Audacity Podcast, Modern Life Podcast Network, and Podbean. Well, without further ado, Gary, welcome to the International Podcast Day broadcast, and the show is all yours.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it very much. Yeah, this is weird how my picture is here. I apologize about that. Our camera was all set up, and when I came on board, they said they couldn't see me, that I was sideways. So we had, in the short amount of time, we turned our camera sideways, and now I have a vertical view I'm seeing here instead of a horizontal view. So I don't know what to do at this point about that. So I want to apologize to everybody. John Lee is John Lee Dumas, in case you know John or don't know John. He's a great guy, great at monetizing his podcast. Is supposed to be here to join me. They changed our link and everything for that. So he's speaking at an event today. I think he was popping on for the hour while he was between sessions. And with the link being changed, I don't know, that may affect him getting on here. So if that is the case, you'll end up with me for a while. But I'm going to give him a few minutes to get here. And before we get into it real deep, and I do want to let you know, I am going to have a contest. I'm going to give away a copy of my book during the show, which I may give more than one away. Who knows? But John Lee wrote an article here. This is 100 great podcasting tips. Anyone who's interested in receiving a copy of or entering the drawing for 100 great podcasting tips, just follow me on Facebook. That's my social media choice, and send me a message saying, I want the book. And we'll draw one, maybe 10 out of there. Who knows? But we'll do some drawings out of there. And hey, Podcasters Coach, how are you doing there? I appreciate the kind words. I enjoyed that interview the other day. But we're going to give John Lee a few minutes to get here. And if you have any questions, please ask him in the chat room. And today's subject is going to be monetization of your podcast, which I would like to have John to join me, but I think I can pretty much handle it on my own, since that's the only reason I create podcasts, are for monetization purposes. And again, I apologize. I know I've done it once, but the vertical feed is really bothering me. If you knew how much I hate vertical feeds, you would understand. But let's get into the subject of monetization a little bit here while we're waiting on John. You know, most people I have found actually create a podcast, and then after they create their podcast, they decide to monetize it. And they look for ways to monetize their podcast. What can I do? Can I get sponsored ads? That's the way most people go. Can I do this? Can I do that? I'm a big believer in all of my podcasts I've been doing since 2004. I have had the monetization in a place before the podcast was built. So I believe in knowing what you're going to monetize it, or how you're going to monetize it, or how you're going to make money off of it, whatever you want to call it, before you even build the podcast, before you produce your first episode. So in my case, I sell physical products. I sell softball, baseball bats. I sell decorating products. I sell all kinds of products. And all my podcasts are created to help me sell those products, which is a great way to do it. I think podcasts are great for physical stores or small shops to sell their products, to build customer loyalty, to have your customer, in my case, I feel like my customer really, really gets to know me from all the great content I've delivered. Then when it is time to buy, they remember me and they go, hey, I want to call Gary. He's a friend of mine. I feel like he's a friend of mine. I know Gary his ways. I know what he looks like. I know what he sounds like. I know what he talks about. I know he thinks the same things I do. These are the bonds that you build with your people when you're building your podcast. Sorry, I looked at this. Vertical makes you look taller. Thanks. Thanks, Michael. I appreciate that. But yeah, building your audience with your podcast and building that podcast so it is targeting your audience, to me, is the best way to go about monetizing your podcast. That's podcast monetization, mine of choice. Now, a lot of people build their podcasts, and whether they build it and have this model before they start podcasting or have this model after they start podcasting, they plan on making money with sponsors. They think that if they're going to get all these people to come, they're going to have all these people wanting to spend money with them. And that can't happen. You can get sponsors. You can get rich with sponsors. But I found most people, even John, doesn't make the bulk of his money off of sponsorships. It's products. Now, maybe you don't have physical products, but you do have online products you can sell. You know, webinars, ebooks, things like that. But getting back to hunting for sponsors, you can go for national sponsors. There are places like Blueberry and Libsyn that will help you find these sponsors even. And they'll put that sponsors ads on your podcast for you. But from what I understand, which I've never gone this route before, so I can't say I know a ton about it, but from what I understand from my friends at these companies, you're going to have about 5,000 listeners to start getting any kind of money at all. And 5,000 listeners probably isn't going to get you rich. So this guy tells me I'm fine if you want to take off. But 5,000 listeners is where you have to probably pretty much be to get any kind of decent sponsorship. Now, another variation of that, instead of trying to find a national sponsor, is to try to find a local sponsor. For instance, if you had a podcast about golfing or about, I just bought the domain Arlington Podcast. I live in the city of Arlington. So I just bought the name Arlington Podcast. I also bought the name Podcast Arlington. I like to get both ways on that. My philosophy is I don't want to be successful with my show and someone else come by the other version and then they get traffic from my show. So for an extra $9 a year, I get both. But in the show Arlington Podcast, I don't know that I'll ever do the show, but if I was to make this show, create this show, produce this show, I would do this show about things happening in Arlington, Texas. You know, maybe it would come out on Wednesday and tell all the things happening on Friday and Saturday in Arlington, Texas. And it'd be targeted for the people in Arlington, Texas. Now, in that case scenario, I could go to places in Arlington, Texas, and actually go up and talk to the owners and try to get them to sponsor my podcast. Okay, so I'm not going after a national sponsor, but I'm going after a local sponsor. Now, I could walk into a place and say, hey, I have a ton of listeners to my podcast. I don't have to give them numbers. I'm not going to give them numbers. I'm just going to tell them I have a podcast. people listen to it. And we're interested in seeing if you'd like to sponsor it as the official nightclub or the official restaurant or whatever. And I'd like to have $300 a week. Now, that person is probably more likely to give you the money, I feel, than trying to get a national sponsor. And you don't have to have 5,000 people, listening to your podcast, 5,000 subscribers, 5,000 downloads. That person doesn't really know that much about podcasting, but they've heard of it. They know what it is. They know your show is about Arlington. Your show is a targeted market. It's hitting a target market, a niche. And that's the niche they're in, and they want your listener, and they'll pay the money. Okay? So that's just one way to get a local audience going or make money off of a local audience instead of trying to go for the 5,000 or waiting for the 5,000, which you may never hit, since the average podcast, from what I understand, is 200 downloads. You could make money with 200 downloads if you went after a niche in a local market, for sure, without any problems at all. So that's one thing to do is that. Now, another thing you've also got to realize when you're trying to monetize your podcast is just a part, one piece of your monetization strategy. It's not, okay, I'm going to get everything from my podcast. You have your podcast, you have your social media to go with it. In my case, one of the things I do is I make books from my podcast. I'll take the Gary Leland show, for instance. I took the first 20 episodes, transcribed it into a book, made that book, or transcribed the episodes into chapters, and then put those chapters in a book. And I made an ebook out of it. I don't get rich off that ebook, but that's a part of the monetization strategy. Someone does buy the ebook. It's doing business in the online world, or bringing your store into your online world, I think. Someone buys that book, then they find out more about me. They find my podcast or they find my website, but they find other things in my circle that brings them into my monetization world, which can be, like I said, in my case, it's physical products, but it could be seminars, webinars, things like that. It doesn't have to be physical products. That's just what I go after, physical products. So that's a great part of your strategy is have everything. I call it kind of like a wagon wheel, what I do. My store is in the middle of my wagon wheel. This is the hub of my wagon wheel. Then I have my spokes, okay, coming out, and there's my actual wheel there, okay, if that makes any sense. You can see that here's a wheel, here's spokes, and here's the hub in the middle. Now, the hub in the middle is what I'm trying to sell them. And then podcasting is one of my tools on a hub, on the spoke. One spoke has a podcast. One spoke has Twitter, maybe. One spoke has Facebook. One spoke has my ebooks. One spoke has my blog. And all these spokes are pointing toward the center, bringing my traffic to the center hub, which is the moneymaker for me. So no matter whether you're selling physical products, online products, the wagon wheel approach, I think, is a great way to bring stuff to the hub. Wave, Gary. I sure will do it, John. I sure will do that, John. So that is what I'm saying about marketing is the wagon wheel approach. I hope that makes sense to you. It works great for anyone. I wish I'd get some questions here I can answer you guys. Be happy to answer your questions here. Don't want to just sit here mono talking by myself. I was hoping to have someone to bounce this off of. Makes a difference. But it's enjoyable just the same.
Gary, you're not all by yourself, I am here.
What? When'd you get here?
You don't see me, brother?
Well, no, now I do.
How's it going?
It's going excellent. I didn't know if you'd make it or not because I knew we changed it up the time or the link. So I was scared that would cause you some problems.
The link did cause me problems, but you know what? I persevered. Got here, and I'm excited to chat with you for the next few minutes. So,
well, good.
What a great day, huh?
Well, hey, and in that case, John, I was prepared for you. I'm giving away a journal, huh?
Woo!
All you got to do is the same thing as was for the Gary book, for the 100 podcast tips. follow me on Facebook, or I don't care if you follow me. Just send me a message saying I want John's book, and I will send someone John's book there. So,
Yes,
John, I had to support you. I had to buy your book, and this is one of the ways John monetizes his podcast by creating what I was talking about earlier, physical products. Am I right, John?
Gary, you're right, my friend. I think diversification is key. I'm sure you were mentioning that a little bit, but it's important to have a lot of different income streams as you're building out your podcast, as you're creating your funnels. So, sponsorships is the low-hanging fruit that a lot of people chase. But the problem with that is, as Gary was mentioning earlier when I was listening, 200 listens per episode, is not what a sponsor is looking for. So the few shows that make it to the listenership that can actually have a sponsor that makes it worthwhile, like that's a monetization strategy. So how can you diversify out? Like how can you have other revenue streams like physical products, like ebooks, like courses, like doing different things you can get your audience, your listeners into your world. So
that's exactly it. Yeah, that's what it's all about. Podcasting is just a piece of the puzzle. It's not the puzzle, it's a piece of the puzzle.
So true, Gary. Preach on, brother. Preach on.
Hey, now I was looking at some of your stuff the other day, not even for the show, because I'm thinking about doing a course on something. And I was looking at courses of people, and I ran into your course as a podcast. You have is maybe a 10-episode course you give out as a podcast, which I haven't listened to them, but I know that sends people into your funnel. That's another part of your marketing for your is that funnel. Am I correct?
Exactly. So, I could have just said, hey, I have Entrepreneurs on Fire. It's a 7-day-a-week show, and that could have been my main focus. Or I could have said, what else can I do that's going to add more value to people in more specific niches? So I have a lot of people that say, John, I want to learn how to podcast. I can't send them to my Entrepreneur on Fire podcast to learn how to podcast because we talk about not technical podcasting stuff there. We talk about how to learn lessons from the failures of past entrepreneurs and their aha moments. So I said, well, I can create a 20-episode season. It's just a season with a beginning and an end, 20 episodes, and call it the Free Podcast Course Podcast. And that's exactly what it is. It's a free podcast course podcast. And I am actually getting some word, Gary, that my audio is kind of crackling a bit. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you, and it is crackling. But, I usually say people don't listen to bad audio, but they do listen to good information.
Well, what I'll do is after I pass it back over to you, I'll grab my my earbuds and see if the earbuds work a little better than this. Because right now I'm in Las Vegas at a conference, so I got the hotel Wi-Fi, which is never the best.
Yeah, I saw you were at the conference this morning, and I knew that was going to that. When I saw you speaking earlier, you streamed that live, which was cool. I said, oh, that could cause us problems. And John, you weren't hurt earlier. But I'm kind of like your stream was at the conference. My phone is vertical instead of horizontal. I don't know why. We had it right and it showed it this way. So we just flipped the phone to make it look better. So,
cool. Well, let me do this. I got my AirPods over here. So you talk for a couple minutes. I'll set these up and we'll cross our fingers and hope it improves.
Sure. And that example I gave you just then of John doing this book as part of his income, I think is exactly what I was trying to get across earlier. You can't sit there and go with that revenue model that you're going to do advertising and make money. It does work for someone once in a while. And the numbers are there. Some people reach those numbers. But if you're going after that model, you're probably going to give up on it before you get to those numbers there that you need to be to make any money off of it. That's for sure. So have a strategy. What you're going to sell, whatever it is a lot more. Your choices are a lot more. Also, I don't know if many people know this, but if you were lucky enough to get your show on Sirius, I have some people who say, oh, I'm going to get my show on satellite radio. Those people are making a ton of money. But, most of the people I know that have had shows on satellite radio are not getting paid in money. No one's giving them money. They're not getting money for that. They may get 3 or 4 advertising spots. And then they have to go sell those advertising spots to somebody. And that's how they make their money. Is that Sirius is going to put ads in the podcast, and you're going to put ads in the podcast. So once again, you're using the model I said earlier about selling ads in your local market. So I just wanted to cover that about the satellite radio real quick. John, how's your headphones working?
I just switched to my AirPods. How am I coming in? Same
Way
crackly
better.
or is it?
No, way better. Way
Good
better.
to hear. Look at that, making the change on the move.
Hey, also, John, I just want to, because I know a lot of people are going to be curious, and I know this isn't the subject matter, but how's Puerto Rico, your home? And
Puerto Rico's devastated. The entire island is literally in the state of what I would consider a fourth world country right now. There's no power, no running water, pure devastation on the entire island. My house got hammered. We were the eye of the storm. Our town was actually the cover of the New York Times like a week ago because that was where the hurricane hit mainland of Puerto Rico. So, my beautiful paradise, Gary, that you've been threatening to come visit is a little less of a paradise now, and had a lot of windows that were blown in, a lot of wind and rain and water damage in my house. The structure itself is fine, but the house has a long way to recover. So we're looking at a long rebuilding process from the inside out.
well, that trip may have to wait till the end of 2018.
There it
to
is.
happen. But I'm coming someday, John. You can guarantee
You are coming,
that.
brother. You are coming, brother.
Hey,
especially now that you got that bathing suit body.
Oh, well, it's a lot thinner than it was, and I think this camera's making me looking thinner doing it up and down right here. We got Short Rich says, I feel numbers are a great motivator, but yes, focus on quality. So what do you think about that? I think quality is the thing. People don't listen to boring podcasts, and they sure don't subscribe to them.
This is what I think people need to recognize when it comes to podcasts. Quality is going to win. Quality will win the battle. It will win the war. So instead of focusing on what's working for other people or, the latest tip, tool, or tactic, whatever it might be, focus on making your podcast better. Because if your podcast is better, more people will listen. More of those listeners will stay subscribed. They'll share with their friends, their family, their loved ones, and that's how your show will grow. That's how people win these days, and with podcasting. And that's what I really want you guys to be focusing on, making your show better.
And also, don't be afraid of a niche. A niche is the most profitable thing to podcast in. To me, of all of my podcasts are niche. I don't go after the Olympics or that type of podcast. I go after girls fast pitch softball. I go after decorating, the Fixer Upper TV show. I don't even call them niches. I go micro niches. They're small niches, but John, if someone goes after a niche or a micro niche, they can dominate that niche and they can be the number one guy in that niche. Where if I went after the NFL, I'm never going to be the number one guy in the NFL. But I'm going to be the number one guy in girls fast pitch softball. And anywhere I go, people know me in that niche. But it's a tiny niche, but a profitable niche if you can control it.
The hardest thing you're going to find as a podcaster is getting that initial momentum. And just like Gary said, you're not going to get that initial momentum if you go for this vague, broad topic, because you're going to be like a girl screaming into the wind. Nobody's going to hear you. Nobody's going to care. But if you instead say, what is that one thing that I can do better than anybody else? Like Gary did, the one thing better than anybody else for the fast, pitch softball. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Gary. It's fast pitch softball, right? Guess what? Nobody else was doing it at the level that he was doing it. So he won. He won that battle. What battle do you want to win? And then again, focus on the quality. You'll also win the war.
That's it exactly, brother. You're preaching to me there, I can tell you. Because I don't know how many times, and another thing I tell people, this is my thoughts, because I've had people come up, when I built my first website in 96, everybody came up and said, I want to build a website. What should I make it about? And I gave them the same answer then that I give them now when they say, what should I build my podcast about? What should I produce a podcast about? I tell people, you ought to try to find something you love or you really like a lot. Because after you do this for 5 years, I don't care what it is. It's work, brother. And if you love it, in 5 years, you're still going to like it, at least like it. But if you don't care for it at all when you start, I promise you, all the work involved to make a living off of podcasting, you are going to hate your job in 5 years. That's just a thought of mine. John, thoughts?
I would respond as well, but I would just be repeating your genius, Gary. So absolutely on all of those things. And I think that was a great question. Was it Corey that asked it? Whoever asked it, great question. And let's hit some more up if they have any more questions.
Yes, let's see. I'm looking at everything here. I haven't got a ton of questions here, but hopefully we'll get some more. Absolutely, numbers are important, but it's easy to get distracted focusing on numbers to the detriment of your content. Speaking of numbers, while we're on numbers, and this is just kind of shifting into a regular podcasting information that I've noticed. I don't like to look at my numbers for the most part. I'm not a guy that focuses on my numbers, and maybe that's because I'm in a niche and I know my numbers aren't going to be high. I do look occasionally, like on the Fixer Upper show, I'm hitting 2,500, 3,000 people, but that's a niche. That's not a ton compared to you. So maybe that's why I don't look very much. Now, someone with a lot of numbers like you, do you check your numbers often, or are you like me going, I know they're going to be high? I mean, what is your strategy on that, and what do you do?
So I don't track my numbers often. I'd say a couple days a week, I am logging in for a couple reasons, because I do want to see if there's been trends. I want to see if my show is trending up or if it's trending down or if it's kind of plateauing, because that kind of gives me my finger on the pulse of, have these recent guests been resonating with my listeners? Have these recent guests really been doing a great job sharing the show? And like maybe reach out to them and say, hey, what are the strategies that you use to share the show that did so well? So I do like to look at the numbers to kind of see what's working, what's not with my business, to kind of keep that finger on the pulse. But, at a point now where I'm getting 1.3, 1.4 million listens per month, those are really big numbers. So those little movements can be really big movements in the overall business. But if you have a smaller show, I'd say don't overstress about the stats. Spend more of your time making good quality podcasts. And, every now and then check in just to make sure everything's going well. And what you want to look for is the trend going in the right direction? Like, is it looking like this, going up slowly and surely, instead of like, going down or plateauing? So that's just what I would look for, are the trends.
So that's a very good piece of information. And when you have the amount of downloads you have, over 1 million a month, well, 5% is a big amount of people.
Huge. It's a huge number.
Yeah, where for somebody with 200, well, we're talking 10.
Right.
And that can vary that much every month. So
so at that point, focus on the trends when you're at those numbers, and then you continue to see yourself trend up. Then you'll get to those bigger numbers.
Now, when you started Entrepreneur on Fire, I mean, if I remember you telling me this correctly, you started this show because you wanted to listen to podcasts every day and no one was doing it. And you said, why is no one doing this every day? I got to listen once a week to the show I like. Is that correct?
Exactly. So that's something I think is very. Go ahead, Gary.
No, I was going to say, you didn't start this out going, I'm going to make a ton of money off of this so I could end it up. You did it, like I said earlier, because it was something you wanted to do.
100%. So I think a big valuable thing that podcasters can really look at and say is, like, what do I personally think is missing in this world? Like, what's something that's not being done, or what's something that's not being done well? And how can maybe you do it better? Like, I think that's why a lot of people give great advice about, like, hey, what are the Amazon products that I should sell? Well, you go on Amazon with a list of products and ideas that like you think you could maybe have a fun time selling and promoting and creating content around. And then you look at those products on Amazon and you see the ratings and reviews, and you read the 3-star, the 2-star reviews, and you see what people don't like about those products, don't like about those services. And then you say, can I make a product or a service that's going to be the fit where these people are giving these bad reviews? It's going to be that solution. Then if the answer is yes, maybe you have an opportunity. And it's the same thing in podcasting. If you listen to podcasts and you really keep saying to yourself, man, these are great shows, but they're just not often enough, or this show is a great concept, but the person's not asking these critical 2 or 3 questions, and then you can come in, step in, and be that person for that content, and to fill that niche, to fill that void. That's where your opportunity lies.
I agree completely. I don't know how many times I've heard someone say there's already 3 podcasts about that subject. Well, yours is probably going to be the best one. That's my thought, but I'm a positive thinker that mine's going to be the best one. Hey, we got a couple of questions here. Podcaster Coach says, when you start your podcast and you want to monetize, what do you suggest to be your first online product for sale? What will give you the biggest bang for your buck? Now, I think, John, that has a lot to do with what your podcast is about. I mean, certainly if you're doing a podcast about golf, you wouldn't be selling bowling balls. I mean.
Yeah. So the process here, I think, is pretty simple. Is you're gonna create your podcast that you think is solving a problem, and that you're also able to add value in, and that you're excited about. You need to have those ingredients. You're launching that podcast, and then what's going to happen next? You're going to have people reaching out to you via Twitter, social media, whatever it might be, and they're going to say, "Hey, Gary, I liked your show," and then you're going to say, "Oh, well, thank you for those kind words. By the way, would you be willing or interested to jump on a quick Skype call?" And they're going to be like, "What do you mean a quick Skype call?" You're going to say, "Well, yeah, I just want to talk to some of my, listeners. I have a couple of questions for you. You get on the phone with a handful of people. You say, what are you struggling with? What are you struggling with right now? And then you listen to your listeners' struggles and obstacles and challenges. And what's the next step? You create the solution in the form of a product or a service or a community or fill in the blank. So create the right podcast for the right people with the right goal in mind. Engage with those people, ask them what their struggles are, and then they'll be showing you the way. They'll be guiding you to what those solutions are that you're going to be providing.
Excellent answer. Excellent answer. And yeah, it's got to go with your show. And people are going to ask you, if your show's popular and they're listening, they're going to ask you. I got another great question here from Abby. So while we're not talking about numbers, and this is kind of a good question, John, when someone says 5,000 or 200 listeners, what exact numbers are they referring to? Monthly downloads, per episode, total downloads per show? There's so many things you can count. And I found this true. I was talking to a guy the other day, and he told me he had 20,000 downloads. And I go per episode when I do mine. I did earlier. I said I have 2,500 per episode. He says I have 20,000. I go, my gosh, 20,000 people per episode. He goes, no, I got 20,000 per month. I'm going, oh, well, that's not really quite as high as I was thinking a minute ago. So that can be confusing to people because do you find a standard thing that is the more standard way to do it?
So this is what people do by the majority, which I think is a mistake, is that they'll log into Libsyn and the first stats they see are how many downloads they've gotten that day. And then that's their number. So they'll look at it, they'll say, oh, I got 200 downloads today. And then they'll look at their next stat is how many do they get that month? And then that's so on and so forth. So that's the mistaken way that most people look at their podcast, because the problem with that is as you launch more shows, of course, you're going to get more daily listens because you have more shows out there, but that doesn't mean that your episode listenership is growing. So the numbers that are important for podcast hosts to really focus on, pay attention. And by the way, the only one that sponsors care about, if you ever go down that route, is how many listens are you getting per episode? How many listens are you getting per episode? So you go into your stats, you click by episode, and then you say, wow, I got 124 listens yesterday for yesterday's episode. Today, that same episode got 10. So now you're 134, but that was yesterday's episode. So today's episode, you get 143 listens. And you're like, okay, now I'm seeing my episodes are starting to trend up. That's the best indication of how many subscribers you have, of how your listenership is actually growing, plateauing, or declining. Listens per episode.
So that's the key there is listens per episode. Hope that helps you there, Abby. We have a message from Travis here. John, when did you see a major change in income once you started offering all your free training and webinars? That's a question. At what stage did we start doing these type of activities if my audience is small? Okay, so he wants to know, did you see a big income change when you started doing your training and webinars? And at what stage with a small podcast should he be looking at doing that?
I saw a massive increase in revenue when I started doing that. When I started offering the free trainings and the lead magnets that were funneling into my paid products and services, I saw a massive increase in revenue. For me, I did that at about the 1 year mark. Why? Because it took me that long to figure it out. You should do it as soon as possible. You need to be potentially launching your podcast with a free call to action for a PDF or a quick ebook or a free course of some kind, to continue to get people into your world, to get their email, to get their Facebook bot subscription, whatever you're doing to collect an audience. That's how you need to be doing it. And that's going to allow you to start to monetize in the quickest possible manner, is by engaging with those people when they first start listening to your show, asking them what their struggles are, creating the solutions for those struggles in the form of that lead magnet, that ebook, that free courses that I was just chatting about. And then that starts your funnel, and that gets people into potentially down the road your paid product, which, by the way, don't have to exist yet. You can create that next step as you're walking. So start as early as possible with that.
Excellent advice. I made a mistake. I got on the net in 96, selling stuff, but I bet I didn't start my email list till 3 or 4 years ago after I had all kinds of stuff going. I mean, it took me forever to get to that, and I don't know why it took me forever. Rachel's following up on our download numbers. She's saying, so listeners per episode at 24 hours after the release. Now, I've been told to use a number on episodes at 45 days. Those are the numbers. That's what Robert Lipson told me. To take your episode 22, for instance, in 45 days, what numbers do you have on 22? 23, that's your average episode, is how many people listen in 45 days, correct?
Absolutely, 100%. Rob is a subject matter expert on all of this stuff, and I completely agree with him. Like, if you want to know on, with the closest average, how many people are listening to your podcast, you look at your shows around the 6-week point, otherwise the 45-day point, and you see where those episode numbers are. Those are the numbers that you're going to be taking to your sponsor that you can say, hey, within 45 days, I'm going to be at these number of listens for the show. And that is the numbers you bring to your sponsors.
So we don't have a question now. So let me ask you this. You've done a lot. You're like me. We've done a lot of different things to monetize in our life. Out of your podcasting, is the number one monetization method that you have or brings in the most money, is it the training and the courses? I mean, you have this on your website, so I guess it's okay to ask. I'm not trying to.
It is totally okay to ask. I've been publishing monthly income reports for 50 months now. I'm very, I'm proud of being very transparent, open, and honest about all the money that we make, all the money that we lose by the stupid mistakes that we make. I like to share it all: the wins, the losses, the successes, the failures. And so we have like 4 really strong revenue streams with about 6 or 7 other smaller ones. But our biggest 4 revenue streams are sponsorships are big. But again, we're getting 1.3 million listens per month. So that's why sponsorships works for our show. Joint venture revenue. So like affiliate income is big. So like me recommending ClickFunnels and Amy Porterfield's course and doing like joint launches. That's a big revenue stream. That's probably about 20% of our overall revenue. Our 2 journals, the Freedom and Mastery Journal, which Gary's giving away one of those today. Those are a big revenue generator for us. There they are right there. That faux leather, beautiful silver embossed gorgeousness. And then
it's a good looking book.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate that. And then our course, Podcasters Paradise is another huge revenue generator for us. So we have like 4 revenue streams that combined bring us, over $150,000 of revenue every single month. And then we have smaller revenue streams, which if you're interested in checking what those are, because maybe they'll be good for you to try out, to test, you just head over to eofire.com/income.
Good enough. And also, there's the book again in case you didn't see it. And I don't think I said this earlier. I'm giving this away, which I did say. But you got to send me a message on Facebook. And I didn't say my Facebook. It's facebook.com/Gary Leland. Just leave me a message there send me a message saying, I want John's book. I don't care if you follow me or not.
I want John's book.
Trying to gain followers. I want John's book. That's good enough. And I'll pick a winner from that. Now, I want to go back to what you were talking about just a minute ago with affiliate programs. I'm not real big in affiliate programs, but I feel I should be. But then again, I always like advertising my own product. So I have a wall I run into. Do I want to advertise my own product so when people listen to my back catalog, they hear me talking about these bats I have or these gloves I have? Because I'm scared people will come later and go, that affiliate program's over. And so I've wasted my advertising space there. That's the problem I have when I'm thinking about monetizing affiliate programs is I want to keep all of my content evergreen, including my ads. Does that make sense?
It does. So what's interesting, I think, for affiliates that I think a lot of people need to recognize is you don't have to do everything. And so for me, having kind of a broad topic like of entrepreneurship and interviewing successful entrepreneurs, I don't have to have a course on webinars and a course on, or a software program to do funnels and do this and do that. Like, I don't need to build a business that does everything. I can instead say, you know what? I know things that work. I'm going to create Podcasters Paradise and make that the best podcasting program in the world. I'm going to write the Freedom and Mastery Journal and make those amazing. But then the other things that my audience needs, I'm going to find the best people that are out there, and I'm going to recommend their products and services because I'm never going to create them. And I'm going to send them my audience, and those companies and products are going to get the benefit of that. And I'm going to get an affiliate revenue, usually, somewhere between 30 to 50% per sale. For instance, I don't want to create a software like Lead Pages and ClickFunnels. So instead, I just recommend ClickFunnels to my audience because we use it and we love it. And right now I generate over $50,000 a month on ClickFunnels revenue. That's like one of our biggest revenue streams, because ClickFunnels or affiliate revenue. So, there's multiple ways to skin a cat. I love what Gary does of keeping everything in your universe if you can, because, you don't want to send people away. They may never come back. But when you build the kind of business that I have, when you say, we only can do so many things so well, then you can look for strategic partners. But, just don't go overboard about it, because it is important to keep people in your worlds.
Yeah. So it's just according to what either way works. One works for me, one works for John. I have another question from Travis here. How long can I create content alone before I need to look for other people to help me, starting on a small budget to no budget? Well, I think Travis says that he knows that I have people that work for me here. I imagine you have people that work helping you now, John. You've become such a big operation. I mean, I can't do it all, and I'm sure you can't do it all. And I think the answer to that question personally is you'll know when you need help, because you can't do it all.
Exactly. And, for me, listen, you want to start doing it all, I believe, because you have to know how to do it all. You have to learn, you have to put in the hard work. And so when you do bring on virtual assistants down the road at like the 6 or 8 or 10 month mark, then you know how to train them and how to do things right. And then if something happens and, they lose power because of a massive hurricane, like you're not like left in a lurch, like you can actually step up and do the work. So I'm a big believer in doing the work and getting to know how to do things, and then hiring people to take the things off your plate that they can take off your plate. So we have 4 full-time virtual assistants. I have 2 part-time independent contractors. So, we have a team totaling 8 people right now. And we're all over the world: the Philippines, Puerto Rico, Pakistan, Portland, Oregon, New York City. Like that's where our team is located, all over the world. But everybody has their role. They know it. And it took time to get to this place where we can build this team and afford to pay this team, but we're there, and it's been a good process.
Now, my team works in my store, or in my building, or in my office, let's say, and they multitask. But I have people that work actually for me. And I've always thought a great place, if you can't find someone online, I thought about this the other day, a great place to find somebody is probably at a church. There are people who have that if you go to the church and just say, hey, do you know any parents, stay-at-home moms that like a job working a couple hours a day? If you're not able to find a virtual assistant out of town you can work with, they probably would love to work in their house a couple hours a day, helping you out. And that way you can train them even, if you needed to. I don't know if that's a good point or not, but I've always thought that was a great point, is you could just find someone locally that is a stay-at-home mom and would love to make some money part-time. Yeah. Hey, John, what would you say is, let's just give a tip right now. We're getting closer to running to the end of this. What would you say, out of all the things you've learned, because you've learned enough, what would you say is a great tip number 1? Let's give them some tips here.
Do you have a specific way you want me to take this tip, or just overall podcasting?
Let's just keep it on the overall podcasting.
Yeah,
because that's gonna monetize. If your podcast is there, you have the chance to monetize it. Without your podcasting being at the level it needs to, or marketing at the level it needs to, or whatever, you're not going to monetize jack.
Let me just maybe say my biggest piece of advice is this: if you're doing an interview-based show, make sure that everybody you interview, you look at them as someone that's like entering part of your family, because you're building a relationship with a very special person, taking time out of their lives to share great content with your audience. So value that relationship. Send a follow-up thank you email. Follow up a couple months later and ask them how they're doing. Follow them on social media and retweet and share their stuff on Facebook. Let them know that they're part of the EO Fire alumni, if they are, and whatever alumni that you're gonna have. Like, make sure they feel like they're part of that, because that's gonna just pay huge dividends down the road. Now, if you don't have an interview-based podcast, you have a topic-based podcast, you have to find where your perfect listeners are, where are your avatars. There's Facebook groups, there's LinkedIn groups, there's meetup.com groups. You got to get out there and actually do the work and find where your listeners are. Go there, be a person of value, add value. And then when the time is right, and if it's right, then you can guide people into your products or services or podcast. So those would be the 2 things for the interview and the topic-based podcasters that are out there.
Well, I'm going to kind of play off of that too, because when I was on your podcast, I thought one of the best things I ever saw was the contact, or the amount of contact you gave me before the interview.
Yeah.
Was fantastic. I mean, it really was. Most people that interview me send me an interview and go, hey, can you be on my podcast? And
Can you jump on?
they want me to do all this homework sometimes to be on their show. Read all this stuff, and which isn't happening. I'm not doing homework to be on your show. But you sent me an email to begin with, thanking set up the time, one thanking me for setting up the time, one telling me where we're going to be, one a reminder, and these were all really personal emails. I imagine those were on some kind of automatic drip sent to me, but they were so personalized. I kept all those emails. I was so impressed with your emails, the way you sent them out and what you sent out and the order you sent them out. I thought that was a great way to lead up to the interview. And then the follow-ups were great also. The follow-up, we've become good friends now because of it.
Yeah.
But that was something I thought was a great tip, was give me info and build that relationship with me before I even come on your show. So when I come on your show, I know you already. Yeah, we've been communicating for a while. It wasn't just like, who's this guy that sent me a message? Okay, I don't know you, but let's start talking. So I love the way you did that, John. I thought that was fantastic, to be honest with you. I still have a folder that says John's emails, with those in there, because I was so impressed with it.
I received that, brother. I appreciate it. I know we're wrapping up now. In fact, I got to jump on my next call right now, but it was cool hanging out today. I feel like we're kind of making this a tradition, Gary. I feel like it wouldn't be International Podcast Day if I didn't get to hang out with you, even virtually.
Well, yeah, that's so kind of you to say, and I'm still waiting to come see you down there. Are you coming to Dallas for FinCon?
Not going to be there, unfortunately. I'm going to be overseas. I'm going to be speaking at We Are Podcast in Brisbane, Australia. So on International Podcast Day, for all of you people that are international and in Australia or New Zealand or wherever you are, We Are Podcast Brisbane is going to be a blast.
Sounds great. John, I appreciate you coming on the show and joining me. Sorry we got that information to you a little late this morning. I know you're at a conference, and I know this was a lot of work for you to get out of there and do this. So I want to really thank you for doing that, John. It means a lot to me.
My pleasure. It was a blast. Take care, Gary.
Take it easy, John.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And so I hope we kind of gave you some advice there or some tips there that you're really going to enjoy. I hope that we answered some of your questions. We brought on John, one of the biggest people in monetizing there is. John's a great guy. I thought we had a great talk there. Looks like we're at 2:50. I don't know what time this ends up, but I'm going to start wrapping it up now. So I assume the powers to be know that I'm getting ready to wrap this up by listening to this. I have a 3 o'clock in this same studio here that I have to start. So I'm going to say, I want to thank you for joining us today. I want to make sure anyone who wants to get any information from me, feel free to email me at GaryLeland@gmail.com. Facebook is my social media choice. That's Facebook.com/Gary Leland. Love meeting new people. Love talking to podcasters. Love helping you guys out. Don't forget, if you want to win a copy of 100 Great Podcasting Tips or John's Mastery Journal, which is much prettier than mine, just message me on Facebook saying you want to win one. And I'll draw a name from that and send it to you. I'll let you know you won and get your address from you then. But until then, I want to thank everybody for coming on. And I don't see my closeout person that shuts. Oh, I hear something. So
I'm here, Gary.
Happening. Hey, how you doing? So I hope thank you for this opportunity to let me and John come on the show. I really do appreciate it. This was our second year, and I definitely enjoyed it, and I have a feeling John did too. This is his third year for the show, but our second year together. But I want to thank you, and I also want to make sure and thank you guys for getting this together and doing this. I know this is a lot of hard work for you guys, and I know that, for instance, this year the links changed and where we went, and you're trying to get all that out, and you have people like me going, "Have you sent it yet?" Because I'm not getting your emails properly. So I want to make sure you know how much I myself and I'm sure the rest of the podcast community appreciates all the effort and work you've gone through to do this, because this is not a small task.
Well, thank you very much, Gary. And it's it's been a hurdle we've had to overcome the last few days with some previous issues, and sometimes Google does some funny things that you don't anticipate, and that's what created part of it. But the most important thing is that it's all coming together. We've got great content on board. We've been doing this since like 4 o'clock yesterday, and we still have a lot more to go. And we really appreciate you and John being on this to provide guidance when it comes to monetization. And I just want to say one thing before I let you go, Gary, and that is, in my opening yesterday, I discussed a lot of the human tragedy that's going on in the world because of natural disasters. And John brings this to light more because of the disaster he has had in Puerto Rico with his home. But as podcasters, we clearly have a voice and we can do something. So I just want to put out to everyone about podcasters helping people. And if you can do anything to support victims of these horrific disasters, please do so.
Excellent way to end it up there. Excellent way to end it up there.
So, Gary, I know you got to run. You have a great week, and hopefully we'll see you around Arlington sometime.
Hey, sounds good. Thanks again, and see you at an event somewhere, my friend.
We'll see you next one.
Bye-bye.
Well, folks, that's going to wrap up this session of International Podcast Day 2017. If you haven't heard, we're trending #1 on Twitter right now. Incredible. We're beating some other amazing hashtags. So please use the hashtag International Podcast Day if you're doing anything in social media. I'd like to thank our sponsors real quick. #1 is Blueberry, our platinum sponsor. Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, The Messengers, a podcast documentary, and Potable. Please go over to our website, internationalpodcastday.com/sponsors. See what they have going on, and I hope you will support them because they support me and you and this entire community in putting on International Podcast Day. We'll be back right shortly with Daniel J. Lewis and Elsie Escobar. Take care.